Welcome back to KTN Prime. We continue with our conversation right here in studio as we evaluate the latest developments, matters, politics and governance. Just to reintroduce my guest, Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst, equally joined by Philip Kisia, who's the executive director of Azimio la Umoja and a governance expert, and equally joined by Irongo Nyakera, who's a former PS and equally the patron at DCP in Nairobi County. Kisia, I'd like your take on matters to do with ODM, even as you reflect on what was said by your colleagues right before the break, because ODM has been touted as a party that is facing an impending split, going by what has been said in the public gallery. Some affiliated to the party seem to believe that it should stay within government. Others are determined to preserve ODM's opposition identity. As an ODM member, which side of the divide do you sit? Will this party get to see the light in 2027?
You know, ODM has been able to weather the storm for the last 2 decades. And I think with sound leadership, it can last another 2 decades or even more. But it's unfortunate that from the time the Prime Minister, the late Prime Minister, passed on, we have seen a lot of turbulence within the party. Okay? There are groups which have emerged, which are purely transactional. So there are characters within the party who are just purely transactional. They actually don't care about anything. There's another set of people who believe in ODM's ideology. You know, social democracy, fighting corruption, elevating poverty, equality, and so on and so forth. Those are some of the ideals that the late Prime Minister Raila Odinga stood for. And those are the majority. And those are the ones who form the foundation of ODM. And then there's the emerging group of young people who are restless, who want change, who are waiting eagerly to take over the space that has been left by the late Prime Minister. Those are genuine, and I can see that group of people, the young people, joining hands with people who believe in the ODM ideology that was founded and left with us by Baba.
But would
you, so the few who are transactional, you know, because you know when you're transactional, today you're offered X by A, tomorrow you're offered Y by B, you'll go for what you think serves you for that point in time. So those are, I don't see them lasting for long, because where they are, the paymaster is looking for returns. He's eagerly looking for returns, and you can see the paymaster getting frustrated by the day. He's getting really frustrated because he's spending, he's in business, the numbers are not being churned in, and therefore you can see the frustration. Yeah? So, and you see when you're paid to deliver and you're unable to deliver, the paymaster will just shut the pipe. The tap will be shut. The oxygen will be blocked. And you will eventually die in no time. So don't be so worried about those who are there for transactional purposes. They are not going to last for too long.
But isn't there a pre-election agreement in the offing? Just this week, we saw President William Ruto, I think, in Nyanza, and Oburu, the party leader, mentioned that, you know what, the deputy president's position is not up for grabs. So it hints at conversations that are ongoing. So when you tell us some of this, we shouldn't worry about them.
Jesse,
you should be worried about them.
You know, I have a lot of respect for the current party leader. But you must understand also age has caught up with him. And therefore, sometimes we must excuse him, okay?
But he speaks with authority.
And I know he means well. He's an old man, he's wise, and he means well.
Yeah.
I can tell you from where I'm sitting, because I'm a member of that particular political party. You know, the memorandum we signed with Kenya Kwanza expires on 7th of March. There was a 10-point agenda, and that is what we should be discussing. what have we achieved on the 10 points that were signed for? I carried out an audit, an independent audit, and I also gave it to other people to carry audits. And I can tell you, Jesse, the results were disaster. Complete F, fail. And yet we only have 29 more days to complete the 10 points. We have not even succeeded in delivering 1 point. So what shall we be going back to our members with? What are we going to show the Republic, the people of Kenya? We must go back with the report form on 7th of March. That report form is terrible. It is reading failed, F, not even an E, it's an F. Okay. So, and you know, when you are holding a report form with an F, you will even not want to present it to the public. And that is why the focus has been removed from discussing the 10-point agenda, and other side issues are being introduced. The other thing that you must appreciate, Jesse, is that the party, ODM, is a founder of Azimio coalition. Is a founder. Wiper is another one. Jubilee is another one. Those, and there are many others, okay? Those are founder members of the party. And if you look at the deed of agreement, to exit, if you must exit, you know, there's a process of exiting. You must give notice and so on and so forth.
Okay.
You must get authority from the highest organs of your party.
Just like PLP did.
Like ODM, and I know ODM, you need about 2/3 majority to exit. Who will get the 2/3 majority to exit? But most important of all, Jesse, what is so refreshing is the fact that, you know, ODM is a movement that belongs to the people. Just like Azimio la Umoja is a movement belonging to the people. If 1 or 2 leaders choose to leave, they leave without the people. You will go alone. You'll walk alone.
Okay, okay. And I was asking this bearing in mind that some of your party members are meant to launch what they call Linda Mwananchi tours. And this includes Edwin Sifuna, Babu Owino, the Young Turks, quote unquote. And they're set to start in Busia County this Sunday. Does this boil down to perhaps efforts to sustain their own visibility, political relevance, or it's in competition with what we've seen called Linda Ground? Briefly.
You see, Jesse, politics is about competition. If you want to be relevant in politics, you have no business being in politics. So from where I sit, I support those young people. Let them go out and Linda Wananchi.
Okay. Irungu, a couple of things were mentioned about your party leader, even as you reflect on matters to do with ODM. Would he want perhaps people he can easily control in positions of power? Such sentiments were fronted by Mukua, a lapdog approach, quote unquote. But equally, when you look at this 10-point MOU, I was listening to some of the committee members today. They were mentioning that we shouldn't politicize this thing. It's work in progress. If you look at the legislative bills in Parliament, there are quite a couple which are ongoing at different levels. If you look at reconstitution of IBC, that's one of the boxes that perhaps has been ticked when it comes to this 10-point MOU. What's your take? Yeah.
I think if I start with the 10 points
that
has been spoken of by Philip, and I think you see, at the beginning it was seen as a reason for the broad-based government to be formed, and really where the 10-point agenda was created. And Philip has said that only one, not even one of those things have been actualized. And I think that's, if they had asked me at the beginning, I would have told them the same, that none will be actualized. And I look at the Mzalendo Trust, which came up with a report on last year, around September, October, on the 259 promises that were made by the Kenya Kwanza government at the beginning. And by that time, only 19 of them had been actualized, which was about 7%. So this government has some common thread, which is really not delivering on any of the promises. And you can imagine that the 259 promises are the ones that were made at the beginning of this administration. Since then, we have had a lot more promises, probably another 200-300 of them, and none has been actualized. So anyone who imagines that the government will do in 1 year what they have not been able to do in 4 years, I think they should just go back to sleep. So for the broad base, if the reason to stay is wait for the 29 more days and see whether or not anything will be actualized. If nothing has been actualized now, just believe that nothing will be actualized for the coming 29 days. And also that's really why Kenyans are frustrated with the current administration, the fact that it's a lot of promises and zero delivery. About, Mukua talked about two things that I would like to respectfully disagree with. First, you say that the united opposition is the one that's reviving Azimio. It's not true. I think Azimio has been revived by the fights within ODM, and we've seen it's more of the splinter ODM. One wants to look for a space outside ODM because the ODM, they probably feel that there is not enough space for them, and then the other one is the one that is fully in bed with government. So I think with that, they probably see that there is a role that they can play within Azimio. And I think for us, as we said, within the united opposition, we welcome any coalition building that actually takes us towards our agenda. And our agenda, we usually call it one term. Yeah. So anything that takes us towards that agenda, if it means Azimio will come in and will partner with us and will form one grouping where we can all speak in one tone, I think we fully support that. With regards again to my party leader, this must say that he is engaged in toxic politics, and I disagree. I disagree, and I believe, you see, it's all about a label, and there are things that Rigathi Gachagua will say, and people call it tribal, call it toxic, but somebody else will say it on the other next day, on the next page in the newspaper, and people will say that that is politics. When you talk about tribalism, every politician defends the people who voted for them, or the ones who take them to parliament, or the ones who they represent at the national table. And nobody ever complains when you hear maybe Nanok talking about Turkana and saying, Turkana needs this, Turkana needs that. Nobody says that it's tribal. Nobody complains when the Speaker of the National Assembly, while he's Speaker for everyone, he talks about Luhya unity. And nobody seems to think that there is anything about that. But when Rigathi Gachagua comes and says that Mount Kenya needs to speak as one, then there's a problem. He now is tribal. And yet even when he was being made, looked for to become the deputy president, he was being made deputy president so that he can be able to woo the Mount Kenya bloc to the Kenya Kwanza voting bloc. So in terms of whether he's toxic or not, I think it's just about convenience and political expediency. So for us, what we encourage, we usually tell our party leader to keep defending us, keep defending Mount Kenya, and at the right time, we will repay by supporting him and his agenda 100%.
Okay.
You know, just
I'd
like Mr. Rigathi Gachagua to support the interests and aspirations of the Kisii community as vigorously as he speaks about the Mrima interest. And you recall when he was the deputy president, he had this conversation about shareholding. And he said that if you do not vote for this administration, then you're not going to attend the AGMs and there will be no dividends.
Okay.
And it's for that reason that people got annoyed. But again, I'm very impressed by my friend Irungu, the way he's politely defended the party leader. And that's what one would expect of the patron for Nairobi. I understand he wants to run for governor. Now, all politicians are transactional. And we shouldn't beat around the bush. And in my view, the person who perfected that was Mr. Raila Odinga. With the exit of Raila Odinga, the glue holding ODM together has melted. Right now, there's nobody within ODM who has the yam and the knife. That is why everybody comes up with a conversation. Everybody is giving a policy position about ODM. So, and we should expect that really, because I don't know whether there's a political party held together by an ideology in Kenya. It's these powerful political personalities who have resources. They beat everybody in their tribe into a pulp, align them, and come to the national table. That is why if you look at the manifestos of all the political parties in Kenya, I mean, every election, and even the ones which are going to be produced next year, it looks like they've been crafted by the same person. And one would suspect these are the manifestos which initially were crafted by Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, and then people take them, modify kidogo kidogo, because there's really no difference.
Okay.
That is why every time there is a handshake. And if you're looking for a transaction, look at the people who keep on having handshakes from one administration to another without very serious changes in policy. And then when you're talking about some of the policy interventions made by Kenya Kwanza, and Irungu has spoken to that, some have been a success, and some maybe have faced turbulence. Like for instance, we are told charity begins at home, and as the Duke of Musocha, I must admit that over the weekend, there was this Nyota program in Kisii, put together by PSC Saboke and Susan Mangeni, which people in Kisii say that it was a huge success, a huge turnout. And people who in the past would not access resources, now they have the resources that they can set up a business. Maybe it needs a bit of panel beating to be a success. But in my view, for you to be a successful politician in Kenya, first of all, you must have that emotional connection with your voters. Okay. Because most of the time, again, you're voted into office, not because you're the sharpest tool in the shade, but because you are able to create an emotional connection, and or maybe create some sort of policy interventions that people are happy. So there are so many members of the National Assembly or Senate or even MCAs and governors who are seated pretty, watching these conversations unfold, and they're not going to pronounce themselves because they know they made very, very strong connection with their voters. And there are several names which come to mind. Apart from Irungu Kangasa, there is Irene Njoki, the one I said of Bahati, yes. And my my Senator Richard Onyonka, who have understood. Now, again, I'd like to respectfully disagree with Irungu over what he mentioned, that he wants Kenya to go to the next level. So there's some political bad manners that we must not excuse from these powerful politicians. That if you want to bring together a cohesive society, and we say that elections in Kenya is a tribal census, so what happens if you come from a marginalized community like Kisii? When are you going to become president if when you go to a room, you're going to be judged by your second name? And you remember what Martin Luther King said, that you are supposed to be judged by your capacity, character, and competence, and not from where you are born. Okay. So I think it's incumbent on Philip Kisii and Irungu, because they've got leadership positions in the political space in Kenya, to really work on merit-based elections, so that we can have a president who is not necessarily from Mount Kenya or the Rift Valley. If you go to South Africa, understand Ramaphosa doesn't come from the biggest community. If you go to Tanzania, understand Mama Suluhu doesn't come from the biggest community. So in my view, that is what you are supposed to encourage.
All right, you've mentioned matters to do with policy interventions and Nyota equally. Just today, President William Ruto was in Kilifi County, I think, disbursing about 160 million shillings through that Nyota startup capital disbursement. What do you make of Ruto's efforts to appeal to the swing youth vote? Because some will say it's truly empowerment, as has been highlighted right here. Others label it as enticement.
I think the latter would define the actions the president has gotten himself into. But before I address that particular issue, let me just comment on IBC and why they possibly gave in. They did not give in because it was one of the items on the 10-point agenda. It is because the loyal opposition, led by His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka, sustained pressure until they gave in. This man was asked to leave last week. In fact, he was given...
so it was amongst the demands you presented, yeah?
it was sustained. I mean, by the time we were getting, by the time our leadership was getting to meet IBC commissioners, they had already asked him to leave. So, and that was one of our demands, minimum, that within 14 days, the IBC CEO must be shown the door. So it had nothing, it has absolutely nothing to do with the 10-point agenda.
Okay.
Sustained effort by the lower opposition. The other demand we have, of course, is audit of the infrastructure, both software and hardware. That is the second thing we're going for, okay? Plus other audits. So let me say this. Let me talk about this Nyota fund.
Yeah.
And of course, my good brother Dismas said that all politicians are transactional. I'm one, I've never been. So maybe...
maybe you're a leader.
Yes. No, I don't aspire to be a leader, but I am a human being who exercises leadership.
Okay.
So let me say this. It's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing to go with a begging bowl to World Bank to borrow 5 billion shillings to distribute to our children who are desperate. Some of them are graduates. Some of them have got skills that can earn them money. What we need is to fix the economy so that these people can get into gainful business, gainful employment. But even if we were to give them handouts, like we are doing right now, calling it empowerment, Jesse, I think our memories are failing us. This same administration is on record having admitted that we lose about 3 billion shillings through corruption on a daily basis. If you work out 3 billion every day, is almost 1 trillion shillings. Jesse, if you just saved 50% of that money, you have sufficient money to fix our education, you have money to pay for help, you have money to pay our doctors, you have money to pay public servants better pay, you have money to give our youth, you have money to repay our loans. So you actually don't need a genius to fix this country. You just need an honest leader. And perhaps that is why the spotlight is on Kalonzo Musyoka.
Okay.
I suspect.
Okay.
I just suspect that people are saying, you know, we have enough resources within Kenya. What we need is an honest leader. And I'm happy that the president has made reference to Singapore and Lee Kuan Yew. Meritocracy, being pragmatic and honesty.
Okay, interesting. Let's see. It seems you're buying into the road to Singapore. But Irungu, as you come in, since we're talking about Marty's policy here, 500,000 workers in Kenya will have their taxes reduced from 30% to 25% in a couple of changes aimed at alleviating the cost of living struggles, that burden on every Kenyan. Do you view this as a step towards actualizing the bottom-up narrative? Is it a little too late? Because the president said we've now stabilized the economy, now we can reduce taxes.
I think it's too little, too late. If you look at someone who's earning 30,000 and you reduce their taxes from the 30%, or 50,000, you reduce their taxes from 30% for that bracket to 25%. The differential is about 720 shillings. If you think of the non-core inflation between last year January and this year January, is 10.3%. So for that individual, they already, with whatever they could have bought with 50,000 last year, today they need 55,000 per month. So essentially they've lost 5,000 shillings every month just from inflation. So adding them 720 shillings is too little, too late. Right now, as a country, if we talk economy, because really that's where we are going. This is the first year where the debt will actually cross the 1 trillion shilling level. And you ask yourself, where is all this money going? And you'll find that most of the money is going to repay debt. Currently, our fiscal deficit is 6%. When the president came in, he found it at 4%. And he said that we will not borrow money, that will live within our means. And we've seen it moving from 4% to 6%. Over the last 3 years, we have borrowed 3 trillion shillings. So essentially, everybody is asking, where is this money going? Currently, the economy, there's really no circulation of money. So when people are talking about that this government has failed, they're talking about that they have no money in their pockets.
Okay.
The narrative that we sold Kenyans was the narrative that we're going to put money in their pockets. Today, there's zero money in their pockets. So then you look at what Philip Kisia has talked about, is that the country has money. The problem is the prioritization. By the time we come up with the Nyota program, and I think Nyota program is a good program. It's a good program because it's about helping young people start businesses and build themselves. The biggest problem is that it's making the same mistakes that were made with the Hustler Fund. The Hustler Fund was sold as lifting people, young people from poverty, taking them to own businesses and run their own businesses, small businesses. But then it was sold politically. So everybody who was coming to the campaigns was told, once we win this government, you'll be able to access Hustler Fund and you can use that money. Yeah. As soon as they did, 20 million young people opened accounts and they have been disbursed to about 50 billion shillings, of which over 50% is non-performing loans. Why is it non-performing? Because there is no discipline in it all. One, it started politically, and two, about 8 million defaulters who ended up being on CRB were actually given presidential pardon, to be removed from that. So anybody who paid tells himself, I am stupid. So when you look at the Nyota, it's the same thing. You get your 22,000. It's not you've been called to a political meeting, you get 22,000, and then for you, you don't realize that it's actually a loan, whether or not you repay, that we as Kenyans will repay. So I think it's really been about the priorities that the government has. There's money, certainly there's money, it's just that we're using it wrong. Okay. And that's why the economy is suffering.
All right. We're pressed of time, 30 seconds each. Closing comments. I know my director won't be too happy about that. Briefly.
You know, in my view, it's incumbent on every politician in Kenya, irrespective of your political biases, to promote, number one, Kenya as an investment destination, so that we have got a lot more investments coming to Kenya, then promote and catalyze our exports. And that is why the visit by the German foreign minister in Kenya was very critical. That they're exploring opportunities in Kenya. And you also saw Musalia Mudavadi was in France promoting Kenya as a destination. So irrespective of our political interest, we must stand up and promote Kenya so that we run away from all these economic turbulence that we are facing.
Well noted.
Very quickly, now, let me just speak on the issue of tax. Now, already, if you look at the tax band, those people earning 24,000 and below are already exempt from tax. So that 5,000, maybe a few couple thousand people will benefit. So there's no effect. The other thing is that moving from 30 to 25%, what is the savings? Like my brother Keda said. But in closing, Kenya is bleeding. People are bleeding. People are in pain. Now, Kenyans have a choice in 2027 to usher in Azimio leadership under His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka and Rigathi Gachagua, to relieve them from this pain. This is a government that is caring and listening.
Karen.
I think for me, I would say that Kenya needs issue-based politics, not just perpetual campaigns that we are seeing. And for me, what worries me is not about the noise. It's the fact that we really don't, the absence of solutions behind the noise. For me, I really hope that over the next 1 year, Kenyans can actually start looking at their leaders and asking them very hard questions in terms of over the last 4 years, given that you want another 5 years, for whichever position that is, what is it that you have delivered? If there is absolutely nothing that somebody has delivered, please let them not present themselves and let us as Kenyans refuse to vote for such leaders.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for your contributions. Hoping for issue-based politics as the political campaign trail gets heated, and trust us as members of the Fourth Estate to keep you updated. Irungu Nyakera, former PS and DCP patron in Nairobi County, asante for your time. Philip Kisia, Executive Director Azimio and Governance Expert, asante for your contributions. And Dismas Mokua, Political Risk Analyst, we appreciate your presence right here. That's how we wrap up tonight's edition of KTN Prime. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. I'm Jesse Rogers. Good evening.